It started with the sound of a door, a slow creak, then a quiet click, the kind of small noise that fills the silence when everything else in your life has stopped moving. I'd been living in that apartment building for almost 3 years, yet if someone asked me to describe my neighbors, I couldn't have said much. I knew the man upstairs played guitar at odd hours. I knew someone 2 floors below had a dog that barked whenever the elevator dinged. And I knew that across the hall lived a woman who kept her blinds half open, never smiled too wide, and always carried her groceries in reusable canvas bags. That was it. That was the sum of what I knew about her, until the night the world went dark. It was mid-February, the kind of winter night when the cold hums against the windows. I was standing over the stove reheating leftover soup when the lights flickered once, twice, and then vanished. For a second, I thought it was just my apartment. I checked my phone, no Wi-Fi. Then, through the door, I heard muffled voices, footsteps, doors creaking open, someone swearing softly in frustration. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and opened the door. The entire hallway was bathed in faint, golden emergency lighting. That's when I saw her. The woman from across the hall, the one I'd only ever seen in glimpses. She stood barefoot in her doorway, wrapped in a cardigan, holding a candle that threw light across her face in gentle waves. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It felt strange to see someone so familiar and yet so unknown standing there in that quiet, glowing corridor. "Looks like the whole building's out," I said. She smiled faintly. "Guess it's not just me then." There was a calm in her tone, something steady. She had the kind of presence that made silence feel comfortable instead of awkward. "You can come in if you want," she said after a pause. "I've got candles and tea." Normally I might have said no, out of politeness or shyness or habit, but something about that night, that flickering hallway, made me nod. "Sure," I said. "Thanks." Her apartment smelled faintly of cinnamon and old books. It was small but warm, soft light, plants on the windowsill, a few paintings leaning against the wall. On a shelf by the door sat a row of small framed photos, children smiling in school uniforms, art projects pinned on classroom walls. "You teach?" I asked. "I used to," she said, pouring tea into mismatched mugs. "5th grade. I miss it sometimes." "Used to?" She nodded, sitting down. "Took some time off. Life got in the way, I guess." She didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. We drank tea in silence for a while, listening to the faint creak of the pipes, the wind brushing the windows. She had that calmness that only people who've lived through storms carry. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. She told me she'd grown up in a small coastal town, moved here after college, taught for nearly 20 years. When I told her I worked in marketing, she smiled. "That sounds tiring," she said. "You have no idea." She laughed, a small, careful laugh like she wasn't used to hearing herself do it. When the power came back, it startled us both. Light flooded the room, revealing how late it was. "Well," she said, standing, "looks like we survived." "Barely," I replied, smiling. She followed me to the door, the candle still burning on the counter. "Thanks for the tea," I said. "Anytime," she replied, "though maybe next time without the blackout." Deal. That night, as I lay in bed, I kept thinking about her, about the way her apartment felt more alive than mine even in the dark. I realized I didn't even know her name. That would come later. For now, she was just the woman across the hall. The next morning, the hallway smelled faintly of her candle wax and tea. The scent lingered, and for the first time in months, I didn't rush out the door. A few days passed. Then one morning, as I opened my door to grab the mail, I noticed a small envelope slipped underneath. It said simply, "Thank you for the company. It was nice to feel seen for a change, E." I smiled, tucked the note in my pocket, and carried it with me all day. Funny how something as small as a note could make the world feel less empty. Over the next few weeks, we started running into each other more often. Once in the laundry room, where she was humming to herself. Once in the lobby, juggling groceries and a stack of mail. Each time there was a smile, not big, but real. Eventually, she invited me for coffee one Saturday morning. Her name, I learned that day, was Evelyn. And she made coffee like it was an art form. Slow pour, steady hands, exact temperature. "I used to drink instant," she said, wrinkling her nose. "Life's too short for bad coffee." Spoken like someone who's truly lived, she laughed, or someone who's just old enough to be picky. We started having coffee together every Saturday after that. It became our small ritual. Same time, same mugs, different stories. She told me about her students. How one boy refused to use capital letters because lowercase felt friendlier. How a girl once told her, "You have sad eyes, but a happy smile." She said kids were the only ones who saw things the way they really were. One morning I asked if she ever missed teaching. Her smile faltered slightly. "I do," she said softly. "But after my husband died, I couldn't go back. The classroom was too bright, too loud." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. We just sat there, the sound of the coffee maker filling the quiet. As the weeks went on, I began noticing small details, a picture frame turned face down, unopened mail on her counter, a calendar with only one date circled in red, April 7th. I never asked about it. But one Saturday, as we sat watching the rain hit the window, she brought it up herself. "April 7th, she said, almost to herself. "That's when he died." I looked up. "My husband. It's been 5 years. Her voice didn't crack. It didn't even tremble. It was steady, the kind of steady you only get after surviving heartbreak. He was driving home from a school event. A storm hit, and she stopped. I was supposed to go with him that night, but I stayed late grading papers. I reached across the table and rested my hand over hers. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. She nodded. "Me too. For a long time, I blamed myself, then I blamed the world. Then I just stopped feeling much at all." Outside, thunder rolled like an echo of her memory. After that, our Saturday coffees became gentler, quieter. We didn't talk about loss often, but it hung there between us, a silent understanding. Some nights when I passed her door, I could hear music playing, old jazz, the kind that feels like a heartbeat. Once I knocked. She opened the door holding a record sleeve. "Billie Holiday," she said. "You can't be sad when Billie's singing." She wasn't wrong. Spring came slowly. The building's broken elevator was finally fixed. The hallway got new lights, and for the first time since I'd moved in, the place felt alive. One morning I found a folded note under my door again. "You make good company. Thank you for helping me remember what it's like to laugh again." I smiled, left a reply. "Anytime. I'm pretty sure you're the only reason this building feels human." Then one weekend, she didn't answer the door. No note, no sound. Her mailbox overflowed with flyers. I started to worry. 2 days later, I saw the landlord in the hallway. "Evelyn okay?" I asked. He sighed. "She's moving out. Said she needed a change." "Moving?" He nodded. "She left something for you." He handed me a small sealed envelope. Back in my apartment, I opened it carefully. "Mark, thank you for your kindness, for showing up without asking why. I'm going to stay with my sister by the coast. I think I'm ready to be around laughter again. I was afraid I'd forgotten how to connect, but you reminded me that even strangers can save each other, quietly. Leave your door open sometimes. You never know who might need to see the light." For a while, I left the envelope on my counter. Then I framed it. Every morning, I'd catch myself pausing in the hallway, half expecting to smell her cinnamon tea, half expecting another note to appear. It never did. Months later, a new tenant moved in. A young woman, hair tied up, carrying boxes labeled books, plants, and hope. She looked nervous, a little lost. "Hey," I said, helping her with the door. "Welcome to the building." She smiled. "Thanks. I don't really know anyone around here." I hesitated, then said, "You will. Just keep your door open once in a while." She looked confused but nodded anyway. That night, I brewed chamomile tea, the kind Evelyn liked. I sat by the window, candle burning, record spinning softly. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. Because connection doesn't always mean forever. Sometimes it's just two souls meeting at the right moment, long enough to remind each other how to be human again. Weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a postcard, a picture of the ocean. On the back, in familiar handwriting, it read, "The coast is loud with life again. The air smells like rain and forgiveness. Thank you for being my neighbor in more ways than one, E." I smiled, placed it next to her first note, and whispered, "You're welcome." Then I opened my door, left the hallway light on, and let it stay that way. Just in case. Thank you for listening to The Apartment Across the Hall. If you've ever had a neighbor, a friend, or even a stranger who quietly changed the rhythm of your life, take a second to remember them. Maybe it was someone who waved when you felt invisible. Maybe it was a voice that reminded you you're not as alone as you think. Life moves so fast. We pass each other in hallways, on sidewalks, in stores, and we forget that every door we walk by hides a whole story. A heartbreak, a beginning, a quiet act of kindness that could ripple further than we'll ever know. So tonight, or tomorrow, when you walk home, maybe pause for a second. Maybe smile at the person across the hall. You never know. That small moment could be the start of something healing. And if this story made you feel something, even just a little, let me know in the comments. Tell me if you've ever met someone who changed your life in a small, unexpected way. I read every story you share, and together we're building a community where ordinary people and ordinary days mean something again. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to Fictional Frame. Every week, we tell stories inspired by real life, stories that remind us that kindness, hope, and connection still exist, even in the smallest corners of our world. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next one, because sometimes the next story might just sound a little like your own. Until then, keep your door open, keep your light on, and keep believing in the quiet magic of being human. This is Fictional Frame, where every story has a lesson worth living.